So, Mr. Praveen Ganapathy, thank you so much for joining us on the SafetyConnect podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Tanmay. Very good morning to you. A beautiful Sunday, of course. I look forward to the discussion today.
Oh, me too. And to learn about your 23 years of experience in the safety space. And also, while I was doing research, noticed that you worked in India, Singapore, Finland, and also worked in companies in the petrochemical space, in the elevator space. And also, your last stint was with Kone as Global Director of Safety. So I'm really excited and looking forward to our conversation today.
Oh, thank you. I really like the word that you mentioned about space. Safety space is beautiful. I've never heard much usage of that word in this profession. But when you say it, I really think it is the right word to use because it's such a huge space. Safety profession is a very huge space where learning is continuous. So my learning journey has been quite a bit. Um, I still look forward to learn more. Of course, learning never stops. To start with, probably I always like to recall my first major job, if I can say, is when I joined Keppel Shipyard in Singapore. So the marine sector was really a big eye opener, basically to give us a direct exposure to real safety on the grassroots level. So I really like that. And then, of course, as you said, moved on to petrochemicals and then oil services, elevators, and so on. It has been a good journey. Yeah.
What got you into safety?
Interesting. Um, to be very frank, I did my BTech degree in safety and fire engineering from Cochin University of Science and Technology, which is located here in Kerala. And I was, in fact, the first batch to come out as a full degree holder in safety and fire engineering. So that was quite a challenge at that time. And today it is a hot course, of course, in the university. Um, and then once I joined in, I started to realize that more than just profession, we were also having a kind of fulfillment that we are trying to help people. So safety is a feeling that we always say, and that feeling comes when we put in a lot of efforts into uh, the environment or the actions or the conditions or whatever you may want to say in terms of a management system. That made it more fulfilling in this profession. But during studies, one main motivation was that there was a lot of jobs available. So that made me join into the degree course. But then soon I realized that it's much more than that. So I would keep it as simple as that, how I started off safety and then moved on to different industries.
Understood. So when we talk about safety, right, it also needs a very strong culture of the organization that needs to be ingrained into every single person in that company. So what are your thoughts on a strong culture and what impact that has on reducing accidents or incidents?
So it's a big word. Culture is a big word that we use in our profession. Um, a while back, you asked the question about what got me into safety. So, uh, down the one important term that every safety professional does not miss to use is people. Safety is always talking about people. And when we talk about people, naturally, the next biggest word that comes is behavior, and then it comes into culture. So, how do we ingrain that? So, before we go into that topic, I have been always amused about how to define culture as I progressed throughout the whole career. Um, Let me put it this way: isn't safety important for every person? So, yes, of course, it is very important for every person. My uncle was actually a scientist in ISR. So he used to always, whenever he sees me, he asks me this question: Are you safe? Am I safe? This is a question I used to get during my studies. And I always used to get perplexed. Are you safe? Am I able to give an immediate answer? Yes, I am safe. No, we generally don't give the answer immediately. So if I ask you a question, Tanmay, are you safe?
I think so.
He started thinking, right? That question immediately triggered you to think. You start to realize, hey, where am I now? Even though it is your room, you still start to realize, where am I now? Similarly, I started to realize that whenever this question was posed to me, I started looking around. Hey, what is it? Why am I facing this question? So when I face this question, that is the time we realize that we may have some risk around us. So naturally, safety becomes very important at a personal level. So when we think about a group of people, then each and every person has to think about safety as a very important aspect or priority in their existence at that point of time, what they are doing or what they are planning to do or what they have already done or what they are seeing around them. So if each and every person is able to see that simultaneously, then it becomes a collective behavior. So that collective behavior is exactly what we call about safety culture. So how do we bring that safety culture in an organization? There are multiple elements that we need to work on simultaneously. The good part of it is that everyone wants to be safe. Nobody says that I want risk. Everyone wants to be safe. That is the good part. So half the battle is won. Actually, each and every person really wants to be safe. Nobody really wants any mishap or any negative consequence. Everyone wants to have a positive atmosphere, happy feelings, and going home back safely. So naturally, the second half of the battle is how do we achieve it? So achieving that part requires multiple elements, and that will help us define or establish a strong safety culture in an organization. I'm not sure whether I've been able to bring in a story around what you're asking, but
You have.
that is how I felt.
One more thing I feel is that your uncle, since he was in ISRO, looks like he knew a lot of secrets about the universe because of which he was asked when he was really safe.
You got it. In fact, it is true. It is true. He used to have a very special flair of asking very short questions, open questions that make you think. So, okay, that is another topic. So you actually triggered me. Understanding the secrets of universe requires an open mind. So when you need an open mind, you need to also have open questions. And open questions is actually laying down the runway towards having a good and strong positive safety culture.
Interesting. So, what are some key indicators that tell us that a company has a strong safety culture?
I would put it in, let me just take out the top three, probably. Even today, let me confide in you that people talk about safety culture a lot. But if you really ask, hey, what is my percentile in safety culture in an organization? I would take a step back. It's very difficult to establish a percentile on safety culture unless you have a reference scale for it. Each time you put a percentile, it is always with reference to a scale of it. So it's an expectation management. So for me, being on the field, before I come to the question, Tanmay, because you triggered my tongue to go a little extra. The thing is, I have been on the field actually rescuing people, fighting fires, feeling the pain of an injured person, or rescuing a trapped person from a hazardous situation. So how do I put in expectations for each and everything to establish that this is the safety culture? It starts to really come back to you thinking again and again and again. Is it exhaustive? The list is not exhaustive. There are many. Situations can be many. Combinations can be many. So what I felt was that in safety culture, if I were to put some critical elements, number one is, of course, how people behave to the situations around them or the actions around them. So the level of transparency is another element that I look at. How transparent are elements of safety and priorities of safety getting aired out inside an organization? How they are attended to in an organization? Then, of course, knowledge. So knowledge here, when I say, is do each and every person know where to look out for help or for references to carry out things what they want to do in their job? And the next element that I look at is, are people able to report incidents or difficulties or even positive things? So, see, when we talk about safety, safety is not just about negative, it is also a very positive thing. I always see that people are more safe than unsafe. I always use this sentence. People are more safe than unsafe. You would have seen, I'm sure you would have talked to people, like when you have a whiteboard with a black dot on it, and you ask a couple of people, everyone say, what do you see? People say, I see a black dot. Hardly people say that I see a big whiteboard. Hey, what is that? There is one black dot. So if you look at job as a whole scenario there, most of the things are safe. There are a couple of risks here and there, which I call them as black dots. So both of them are equally important for safety professionals like us. We are supposed to see both the white side as well as the black dots. So we are supposed to see both the safe as well as the risk part. So coming back to safety culture, the elements that you asked, one of them is actually to identify how transparent, how easy is it for people, is the system allowing them to easily report or to manage risks, incidents, or difficulties, complaints, whatever it may be. That is also one important element. So reporting management or incident management, if I just classify them in a big umbrella, that is also one important element that I would look at to check whether the safety culture is in a reasonable level inside the organization.
So you mentioned about transparency, knowledge, and incident reporting and management, right?
Primarily, top three.
Yeah. So wanted to understand from your experience, how is an effective incident reporting and management system really helped move the needle towards improving the safety culture of that organization?
It really helps a lot. It really, really helps a lot. See, every incident is an opportunity also. Every incident is an opportunity. Today, people don't talk about risk management, right? People talk about risk and opportunity management. I'm sure you have heard of that term. People don't talk about just risk. People talk about risk and the opportunity it is. So when you have a risk, when you identify a risk, then you have an opportunity to control that risk and also an opportunity to prevent that risk. And that opportunity to prevent the risk may be also a business opportunity. So if we look at incidents, what is an incident finally? An incident is something, a risk that went uncontrolled. It went into, really reached a consequence. Right? An incident really reached a consequence. A risk that really reached the consequence is actually an incident. In simple ways to understand. So if we are able to identify all the incidents, report all incidents, then imagine the opportunities that we have in terms of improving the business management of that whole enterprise. But for that, first we need to know what are the incidents happening, right? So incident management naturally is one of the best. But here then, if you start dissecting them, of course, there are multiple things which we can look at as we discuss more about it. But I really like that part you mentioned. How effective is it? It is very effective. It is extremely effective. Improvements, design improvements, innovations, new control systems or even new softwares that are coming today, everything comes from an experience in the past. And those experiences, many of them come from incident management when it comes to the topic of safety. So let me just put a full stop there to just throw the situation back to you. Is that incident management, before we dissect it further, what are the different elements that we need to look at? In an overall context, do you really agree that each and every incident is really an opportunity for improvement?
Absolutely. I completely agree with that because at the end of the day, if an incident happens, it's somebody who is not available to work for a couple of days, and maybe it could lead to a fatality. And in certain situations, in case it is quite serious, the factory could also be shut for a couple of days, right? So the the cost associated with an incident is quite significant. And understanding these near misses or incidents and then taking the right corrective actions at the right time, that can prevent this from happening and then ensure that we don't encounter a situation where there is loss of life or the factory being shut. So I definitely agree that this is something which is very, very important. No doubt about it.
Exactly. And here you mentioned a couple of consequences as a result. I didn't start dissecting the incident management system as such. I was just only start stating the fact that is effective incident management helpful in safety culture? Or I would even say that it is effective for business culture also. Safety is supporting business. That is what I would say today after 23 years of working. It's not just safety management that it supports, it also supports the business also to go into a very positive direction. Like what you mentioned, we lose money, we lose time, we lose people, we lose productivity time, we lose efficiency. All these are costs which is actually detracting the business. So very effective incident management is going to be a promoter of the business, not a detractor of the business.
Also, notice that a lot of companies which are now getting into safety, or maybe a new manufacturing plant, not one of those companies which are part of a group or an MNC. Well, I'm talking about an individual standalone manufacturing plant, maybe run by a proprietor, right? In those situations, maybe they've now started to hire one safety person, and they're just getting started with a culture of safety. It could be because of regulatory pressure or for whatever reason, right? In situations, we notice that safety is not given so much of importance, but they might have that safety person who is who wants to, yes, bring about a change and who wants to put forth all these processes and so on and so forth. So any message you have for those people who are like who have joined a company who is and that company is new to safety, what should what should their attitude be? Because they also have to now educate a lot of people about these processes, protocols, and importance of this and so on. And sometimes it gets a little disheartening for them when they kind of constantly hit like a brick wall when they're trying to implement something. So any thoughts for those people who are working in these companies that don't already have a mature safety culture?
Uh, I like I like the way you started in terms of SMEs, especially small and medium enterprises and smaller organizations or manufacturing plants. So, when our safety colleagues, a new person joins this company, um, let us both of us take one assumption that they are already trained people, right? They are professionals. So we don't want to teach them safety, right? People, if a person is appointed as a safety officer, I'm taking an assumption that that person has already done his training. He knows the basic elements of how to manage safety in a organization or a setup. So that part, let us take it away. Now let us look at the second part. How do they make that practical? How do they realize their knowledge? How do they apply their knowledge inside their organization? From experience, I have been dealing. If you look at it, service providers to a big company can be smaller company, right? So a very big company engages a subcontractor. That subcontractor may be providing one type of service for a big company. So if you look at the subcontractor alone as a company, that will be a small entity. It could be a small entity. And that small entity may have one safety officer and they may have a certain setup. So now the situation for that safety officer is also to help that company to retain that connection with the big company so that they get continuous business. So there is another expectation from the big company that I need a minimum set of safety requirements from you to be put in place if I need to continue giving you the business.
Yeah.
So the message I wish to give, I will not go further into it because it's a very big topic, but the message I wish to give to that new safety person who joined the company is also to understand the business. First and foremost is to understand the business. Don't try to implement safety off the shelf. At the end of the day, if there is no business, there is no meaning talking about safety. So safety is very important when the business thrives. So the very first point is the safety professional need to spend a lot of time to understand how the business works. What is the gimmicks of the business? What is the workflow of the business? If the business workflow is very much understood, then naturally then you start to establish the risk flows of that business. Now, inside those risk flows, you need to, you in the sense, the safety professional should also have a capacity to, let's say, let me use a word of prioritizing the risk to the management of the business to say that this is going to affect your business. Any of the risk that is going to affect the business is not going to be thrown away from the ears. It will stay somewhere in the middle. It will not go from the other ear. And that is your opening. That is your opening. The more you become contributing, the more safety elements that start to contribute to the business and you're able to reflect it in the right way, then the success rate starts to establishing a bigger envelope of safety culture. Now, there are many examples. For example, what is the risk control strategy, for example? In risk control strategy, Tanmay, you remember the pyramid, right? We talked about elimination, substitution, engineering control, administrative control, and PPE. Now, administrative control and PPE are the last two segments of the whole pyramid, right? But if you are able to achieve an elimination on the top, do you think management is going to be not looking at it? No. They will be jumping on it. Because if, say, for example, you can reduce one step in a process to, in fact, eliminate the risk, and also that is going to contribute to the savings, then naturally, that is why elimination is on the apex, on the top. So elimination, substitution, engineering control, administrative control, and PPE, the top three segments of the pyramid, are long-lived. The rest of the two depends on people. They can choose to follow or choose not to follow. A PPE control is something that people can choose to follow and people can choose not to follow also, right? And that is where culture comes, because safety culture is that we expect people to automatically comply with it and consequences come into picture. So my message, let's not deviate from the topic here, is that my message here to safety professionals from experience that I learned, because I have also gotten beatings in the past. When I try to do, I also reach a wall. But then sometimes you can make a door in the wall. So don't get mellowed down or don't get suppressed. We can always find a way. Most important is learn the business workflow very clearly. Establish a risk management flow. If you are able to establish a risk management flow, I can assure you that you will find various pressure points where safety can be achieved. Risk management flow is a beautiful thing. And the third thing is incident management. Now, incident management, if you are able to identify incidents, if you are not able to identify incidents in a business workflow, then it is a bit hard. But I can assure you that you can identify every incident management, every incident occurrence that is existing in a full business workflow. If that can be attended to, that is also a success astra, basically to start giving attention to safety management in business.
Right. So when we talk about incident management, do you see any difference in the way incident reporting, incident management is done with a company that has a large field service team, as you had seen with Kone, Schindler? How is that versus what it would be for like within a shipyard or petrochemical company? How is it different?
I will start with the environment first. The environment in a petrochemical plant or in a shipyard, the the risk the risk scenario, the risk occurrence scenario is very high. So naturally, there is a very heavy set of control systems in place to handle all kind of occurrences within a defined boundary. Within a defined boundary. So naturally, you have a full-fledged team to look at it with surveillance continuously throughout the whole battery limit to see what is happening, how are things managed, how are operations managed, how do we avoid incompatible works from happening, etc., etc., etc. So the incident management becomes much more well covered inside a battery limit of a business organization. Now, if you take a field service organization, any field service, of course, I come from elevator industry, so naturally, elevators, you can see that it's spread across the whole world. So they have to be maintained, they have to be serviced, they have to be repaired. So one or two people will be going to multiple locations basically to do those works. So we depend on these people basically to report back to us. So back reporting becomes a very big aspect in field service management compared to a shipyard or a petrochemical plant where there are alternative methods of surveillance that are continuously happening 24/7. Whereas in field service, you don't have a continuous surveillance to that extent like that because you depend on a person's competence to carry out the job on the field and back report all his experiences. So the incident management triggers is not always automatic in a field service management. You depend on the person who is involved at that location to give that back reporting, not purely on control systems. Of course, in today's world, you'd have heard of IoTs and 24/7 connectivity, etc. So from a system perspective, we do get back reports on the performance of the machine or the performance of the equipment. However, when it comes to the actual service or the repair that our people are carrying out, they need to report back their experiences, what they had on the field. So incident management logic or incident management setup that we need to have for a field service is a little different compared to the rest of the manufacturing plants or shipyards that you mentioned. That is to start with. Now, with field service management, things must become easy. Things that are easy, people will do. Things that are complicated and difficult, people hesitate to do. We all don't want to do complicated things. If I have to spend half an hour to just submit one incident report to somebody, I can tell you that you can forget getting any reports.
Yeah, true.
If people has to just take only a minute or two to quickly submit, hey, boss, supervisor, I experienced this while carrying out a service inside the elevator pit. And it takes half a minute or a minute to just click the submit and it immediately gets notified to the respective people for help. It's much better. So field service requires a bit more smart solutions, basically, and simple solutions, because these people are the spanners and bolts who actually carry out work. They don't want to spend too much time on a software to submit
Yeah.
what I experienced here. So that is one difference that I would like to say. And one more, if you allow me, just one more is that the reporting of an incident is also very important to have decent information associated. So the informations, when they are decent enough to make an assessment, naturally helps us to go to the next stage of how to manage it also. Whether in terms of investigation or in terms of immediate reactions, in terms of immediate corrective actions or whatever it may be. So if you dissect the incident management system into reporting, analysis, investigation, and again root cause analysis, and finally corrective actions and preventive actions. This is a general workflow of the whole incident. Now, this all involves people there. So people has to do it. And automation and people must have a balance for a success of a very good quality incident management.
Understood. So one thing that you mentioned, which was so important, is that it has to be easy for them on the field also to be able to report a near miss or an incident, right? And that's what we've also noticed, because a lot of companies, they might have implemented an incident reporting or an incident management software, but not everybody on the field has access to that, right? So they have to communicate that to the manager. Manager has to feed it into the system. They may or may not do it. They may do it over the weekend. So that way, and if a manager gets multiple incident reports, again, it's a burden for them to. They should do it, but again, they end up not doing it. So one thing that we have done with certain companies that we're working with in the field service space uh, is that we've given like every in through the mobile, of course, with Safety Connect, we help enterprises with reducing the number of accidents through our AI-based driving safety application. So it monitors things like your phone usage while driving, harsh acceleration, braking, cornering, overspeeding, coaches people on how they can become safer, and gives organizations visibility into the risk profile of their employees so they can understand who could potentially meet with a road accident. And since a lot of service companies are using our our software, we've also given them the ability to report a near miss or an incident through the application itself and capture the evidence also through the application itself. And we also capture the location from where this is happening. So that makes it so easy for them to even report this near miss or incident. And also another thing is some companies, they give a lot of thought to your incident reporting forms also, right? Making sure that it is not too verbose, it's not too large. So I mean, that's where even AI can come in handy, right? In case some company doesn't know or is not sure about if this form is good, we can also leverage AI to fine tune those forms. And another thing with the advancement in I feel like we will reach a stage where instead of having people fill out a near miss or an incident report with text, they can just speak to the application, and then through your natural language processing, it would convert that into text. And then they could speak in any language that they want, right? And also, in case they miss out certain key parameters, the application can actually ask them, oh, what happened here? Did this happen? Did that happen? So through that, we're now able to ensure that we're accurately capturing the incident report without missing out any parameters which might be important for a thorough investigation. So yeah, that's a very interesting development which is happening now with AI, which is allowing us to work on such technologies as well.
if I complement to that, Tanmay, it will definitely help now as a professional in field safety management and difficulties that we have seen both from the user perspective as well as from a strategic perspective is that now when people report, the reporting part, the very first report that comes, that is what I want to complement with what you mentioned. So you mentioned a couple of very nice aspects of AI, of what happened here, or if you're reporting this nature of an incident, if the AI triggers that, okay, automatically only the next three items that you need to immediately answer to help you complete the report, basically, what happens there is that the initial report becomes a success. It's just like the first impression is the best impression, right? So the very first investigations or the very first incident report notification that comes, if that is a success, then the next step will be more fruitful. So imagine also the other way around is that people receiving thousands of incident reports coming in. Now, this is where classification of incidents come into the picture. So a serious incident naturally has its attention. If it is a fatal accident or if it is a serious injury incident, yes, naturally it has its attention. What about a near miss? So when a near miss, that is also an incident. An incident has multiple categories. But how do we get reasonable attention to all the incidents that are getting reported? That is where safety culture starts to become a big aspect. And this is why, if I go back to the very first thing that you asked, knowledge. So people who are reporting the incidents should be able to report decently good quality information to give that attention on the aspect that whether this is a high risk near miss or whether it is a medium risk near miss or whether it is a low risk near miss. So there is an interconnection between the severity of the incident as well as in terms of the occurrence of the incident where AI will become, because AI immediately starts to go back to the database saying that, okay, there has been a similar incident that has been happening in the past. So this leads to better analysis and this also leads to better strategies for the
Totally.
culture.
Absolutely. And also, as you rightly mentioned, when there are so many incidents being reported, the classification also becomes a very key aspect. That's where AI can also help and look at auto classifying a lot of these incidents. And then, of course, to begin with, somebody will have to validate whether it is done appropriately or no. But in the future, I feel we will reach a stage where the classification can, 99% happen accurately. And yeah, I think that saves a lot of time of the professionals also. And also once an incident is reported, once it's classified, AI can also go and look into your training data, your permit to work systems, your audit reports, audit findings, and then see where were the gaps. So that's another thing that AI can be used, because AI can run through like huge amounts of data uh, and find those insights which is otherwise hard to find by a human. So that's another key aspect that we could leverage AI for.
Just to, if you are interested, I'm also watchful of the time, but if you are interested, is that in shipyards in Singapore or any other locations, there is a concept called VSCC. So VSCC means Vessel Safety Coordination Committee. Okay, so what happens? It's a mandatory requirement. It's a government requirement. Each and every ship which is inside the shipyard, the moment it comes in, from that day until it leaves the shipyard, every day there must be a meeting called VSCC. So any kind of work that is done on that ship must be part of that VSCC list. This is to avoid any incompatibilities of the work and also to have better project safety management. So the logic and the concept is very simple, and it has a very big help in terms of preventing mishaps. Now, this is where your AI comes. If AI is successful to have a beautiful system for a shipyard, where any work or incident related to that work is immediately getting connected to the VSCC list of that ship, then automatically it starts to identify that, oh, this is the plan that it is connected to, whether it is part of the plan or whether it is out of the plan. Just to give you
Okay.
an actual reality how things work.
Got it. And so as we were talking about, it's very important for the incidents to be reported well, right? Like, so what has worked in terms of getting people to report? Strategies that worked, or have you seen that maybe there are some strategies which you tried overseas which maybe didn't work in India, or are there certain local adaptations which have worked well in the Indian landscape, which have not worked well abroad? So can you talk a little bit about what's worked best to get this ingrained into people to actually report?
Yeah. Um, uh, it starts with the country also. I would like to learn something from you is that you mentioned about the mandatory requirements in a country, right? So if there are incident reporting requirements which are highly stringent in a particular country, things are much better when it comes to injury reporting. Now, again, when it comes to near miss incident reporting, that requires a bit of a strategy. Now, one success factor is that I was able to really promote near miss incident reporting in my last organization very well, to such an extent that people have got comfortable in reporting near misses to the company. Now, the logic comes here is that if I say something to the company, is my company hearing to me? I have that expectation. The person who is reporting is from the field, right? If that field person makes a report to the company, he has the right to understand that the company heard me. If company is not hearing me, then I'm not going to report again. So now that part is extremely important in your promotional aspect and your setup. So I would start with an incident procedure. The incident management workflow, the incident management process that you have inside the company need to have a little bit of variation between countries. Some countries, it is part of the culture and the legal requirements that people are okay to report things to the organization. Whereas in some countries, people have an assumption that it's just going to fly away, it's going to go to the air. That is not good. So this is something I learned over a period of time, that if as a safety professional we are able to bring in a process flow wherein each and every incident is recorded and the cycle is completed to give a feedback to that person, that your incident has been analyzed, it is so and so was the risk and so was the corrective actions and preventive actions that have been planned for. Some will be just only part of becoming a awareness program or something like that. Whatever it may be, that person need to get that feedback and acknowledgement that it has come. So this acknowledgement part has been one success factor for me to get incident flow smooth inside the organization. Now, difficulties, yes, there has been difficulties. Now, for example, I have seen big variations between Europe, Asia, India. So countries within Asia also has variations inside. So the variations all come back to the leadership. I've even heard some senior leadership team members saying that, oh, this is just a small cut. What is there to report in it? Because it is accepted. It is accepted that as part of the job, the cut is bound to happen. No, for me, no. If I can prevent, that is great, right? So, but to prevent it, we need to know how many minor cuts we are having inside the organization, right? So that change, that transformation of understanding that each and every incident is an opportunity varies between countries. I can tell you that. So in developed countries, also in Europe, also have seen things are very low in the reporting in some locations, and in some European countries it is very high also. So the contribution comes here from leadership. Definitely it comes from management leadership. It comes with the management system. Again, I would say competency and knowledge. And the most important part is how we promote the incident management process. If we do not promote incident management process, we will never achieve the goal. That is why I'm so particular about incident management process. Why are people only talking about safety campaigns, safety slogans, or safety competitions? Incident management is also a campaign. We need to positively promote incident management to the whole organization. So that is one success factor which will determine the cultural setup of organization. Forget about the results. Let us forget about the results. Let's not worry about how many incidents were reported. But on the first hand, my question is, how many times are we talking about incident management to the whole workforce? People should be comfortable reporting incidents, not with a fear that they might get reprimanded, or not with a fear that, or an assumption that this is waste. No, incident management is not waste. We are talking about lean management systems today. So the process must be lean, that is important, and also the process must be promoted. So there is a conviction in each and every person to say that by reporting an incident, I'm actually helping the company succeed in the business. And that is the promotion part. How is incident management helping to promote the success of their business? This has to be preached continuously inside the organization. As long as it is not preached, then it will be always a reactive process. But for me, incident management is a proactive process. It is not a reactive process. Because I have a certain frequency rate graph doesn't mean that my performance of the business is poor. The way I assess a company is that if I'm having incident frequency rates, there is a graph. I'm not worried about the accidents happening there. I'm more worried about the systems that they have inside the company. Because I am happy that it is getting reported. So if I'm having a zero incident graph inside the whole company, I'm not going to be happy about that.
Yeah, true. And a lot of companies celebrate that.
Exactly. Celebration must be in terms of a quality incident management process, not just zero incidents. And it is highly improbable to have zero injury incidents. I'm not talking about zero fatalities. I'm talking about zero injury. Injury can be very minor injury, also it can be a major injury. If a minor injury is happening, even maybe a scratch, if it is getting reported, I would say that there is a good quality management process existing inside that company. So countries have been different. A lot has to do also with the overall country culture, reporting culture, the overall mandatory requirements of the country. So if there is a like Singapore is very stringent in terms of reporting incidents. Hong Kong is very stringent. Malaysia, to a good extent, it is stringent. But we have cases where Indonesia, Vietnam, etc. rules do exist. However, the level of compliance across the whole country, across the whole industry can have variations in terms of expectations of rules. I'll give you a classic example. Do you know in the past, some of the countries, a report of an injury to the government has to be made only if the person is not able to work for more than 3 days. Whereas companies practice that if a person cannot work for more than 8 hours, please report an injury. But the government itself was saying only after 3 days only you need to report incidents. So imagine the implication of such a rule over the overall safety culture of the organization. So there was an acceptance of certain severities, and whereas there has been a prioritization of the severities of incidents. From a country scale, we understand the overall management logic behind it. However, the understanding of that to a business is that, hey, this is only 8 hours. Forget about this incident. We don't need to record it. We only need to record only those incidents which are more than 3 days. So recording and reporting has a big thing. We need to record all the incidents.
Understood. So that's how important it is for governments to also be thoughtful when they're framing these kind of guidelines as well. Very important. Yeah.
In Singapore, Singapore is very easy to quote because in Singapore you get a statistic fact sheet available for the public every month, and that includes all the industries of the whole country.
Okay.
Whereas in India, it's still difficult to really get a statistical fact sheet of the whole country in terms of industrial incidents.
Mhm.
Similarly, in the past, from legal perspective, Singapore used to be also having Factories Act, right? If you remember. So in 2006, if I take the history of evolution of law, so in 2006 was the time when Factories Act was repealed in Singapore and was replaced by Workplace Safety and Health Act 2006. Now, I will not go deep into it, but can you see the difference in the word? First one was the factory, second one was a workplace.
Yeah.
So everything became a workplace.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But even today here in India, India also has got transformations. If you look at Factories Act amendments, there are multiple amendments. So India also started using the term workplace, but the title of the act is still Factories Act. So today in India or in many countries in Asia, let's not take India alone, many countries in Asia, we still call it Factories Act, right? So the factory means any production organization, any production line as such. People don't perceive that a workshop is a factory. This goes back to your previous question of SME, small and medium enterprises. An aircon workshop, is it a factory? Or, for example, an automobile workshop, is it a factory? By definition, here and there, yes, but not everything comes under that category. So, Workplace Safety and Health Act, it changed from prescriptive to duty bound. So now we need to fulfill our duty, not to comply to a prescription like a doctor. A doctor gives a prescription, a patient needs to comply to it. But it is our duty to comply to it, not that it's a rule to comply.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think this was very insightful, and thank you so much for sharing all the wisdom that you have gathered over the years. I'm sure a lot of safety professionals can watch this and then get a lot of insights from it and actionables as well, which they can directly take to their workplace and start to implement. One thing I want to ask you is, of course, you've shared lots of nuggets of wisdom, but what's that one thing you want to leave people with?
A very important advice I would like to give from bottom of my heart to all safety professionals or aspiring individuals in the field of safety is that be a good listener, be a very good observer, and do not agree to everything immediately. Always have a question in your mind: why, why? Or always process your thinking like who, what, where, when, why, and how. This will help you progress very well in safety profession.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us on the Safety Connect podcast.
Thank you very much, Tanmay.
Thank you.